On a quiet street corner, a proud black woman walks home, her emerald necklace gleaming in the sunlight. But that beautiful piece of jewelry draws the wrong kind of attention. In moments, a police officer singles her out and accuses her of theft. No questions. No evidence. No interest in her explanation. The cold snap of handcuffs follows, and he hauls her to the station with arrogant confidence. What he doesn't know is that he's just made the biggest mistake of his career. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The late afternoon sun spread gold across the quiet streets of Harmontown, North Carolina, casting long shadows between brick storefronts and lampposts wrapped in summer bunting. The town, quaint and proud of its old southern charm, bustled gently. Shop doors chimed with customers. Teenagers cycled past rows of flower beds. And the scent of warm asphalt, mixed with the tang of barbecue drifting from Carter's Deli on Main. On this seemingly ordinary day, the air held a stillness beneath the movement. Like the moment before a storm you didn't yet know was coming. Nain Brooks moved with graceful certainty, her heels clicking on the sidewalk like punctuation marks to a sentence she had written herself. Tall, confident, with dark skin that glowed beneath the sun. She wore a crisp sleeveless cream blouse, tucked into a pair of tailored slacks. Around her neck rested a silver chain, elegant but subtle, until it caught the light and revealed a single emerald stone, rich and green as forest glass. It wasn't just jewelry. It was memory and promise. A wedding gift from her husband, Dorian. A man who loved her in a way that defied every expectation this town had ever set for a woman like her. She had just left a keynote session from the Harmontown Tech Forum, where she had spoken on AI ethics and law enforcement databases. Her name tag was still clipped to her bag. It read, Nain Brooks, Systems Architect. As she turned the corner onto Ellison Street, her path took her past a row of parked police cruisers, idling outside the precinct. Leaning against one of them was Officer Brent Malloy. Mid-40s. Sunburnt cheeks. Buzz-cut hair turned more gray than blonde. He held a styrofoam coffee cup in one hand, and wore the kind of smirk that made people look down when passing him. Brent had been on the force for nearly 20 years. Not because he was particularly skilled, but because he knew how to survive systems that rewarded men who never questioned their own authority. To him, the badge was not a symbol of service. It was a shield, behind which he could wield suspicion like a weapon. His eyes caught the glint of Nain's necklace, and something in him twitched. Maybe it was the way she didn't slow down. Maybe it was the way she held her head high. Or maybe it was just the way she didn't seem to care that he was a cop. And she was a black woman walking alone, with confidence. She didn't shrink, didn't smile, didn't nod in acknowledgement. To Brent, that wasn't neutral. That was disrespect. Hey, you! He barked, stepping away from the cruiser, the gravel crunching under his boots. Nain stopped, brow slightly furrowed, turning toward the voice. Her pulse quickened. Not out of fear, but calculation. Yes, officer, she replied. Polite, but firm, as if testing the air for danger. Brent's tone hardened. That chain around your neck. Where'd you get it? The question wasn't casual. It was sharp, laced with implication. And it hung in the air like smoke. Nain blinked, briefly stunned. It's mine, she said simply. It was a gift from my husband. She could feel the shift now. The way his eyes narrowed. The way his stance grew wider. More invasive. A gift? Brent repeated. Voice dripping with disbelief. That right? Looks pretty damn expensive. You sure it's yours? His hand hovered near his belt. Not on his gun. But close enough to send a message. Nain's expression cooled. Yes, I'm sure, she said. Is there a reason you're asking me this? She was aware of passers-by beginning to glance their way. A slow circle of unease forming in the air. Brent folded his arms. Scrutinizing her with open contempt. You match a report. Woman with dark skin. Fancy necklace. Seen leaving a boutique 2 blocks down. Seems awful coincidental, don't you think? He lied without flinching. And the lie had venom in it. That's a lie. Nain said quietly. The calm in her voice like a blade. I just came from the municipal forum. I spoke there. She lifted her badge a little from her bag. He didn't even look at it. People like you always have an excuse. He scoffed. Louder now. As if performing. Always got some speech ready. But this isn't a courtroom, lady. This is real life. And out here. Your words don't mean much without proof. Her breath tightened in her chest. She wanted to scream. To shout. But that's what he wanted. Instead, she said. People like me. What does that mean, officer? Her voice was calm. But each syllable was sharpened. Brent took a step closer. Nose inches from hers. You know damn well what I mean. You people think you're above being questioned. You walk around like you own the place. Dripping in things you didn't earn. Nain's jaw clenched. Her fingers curling into fists. I earned every inch of where I stand. And I'm not afraid of you. Brent's lips curled into a sneer. You will be. And in that moment, Nain knew exactly what he was going to do next. A gust of dry wind stirred the dust at their feet. As the street around them seemed to grow quieter. As if Harmontown itself held its breath. Nain could feel the air shift. Danger didn't always come with a weapon. Sometimes, it came dressed in a uniform. Cloaked in entitlement. Smelling of stale coffee and misplaced power. Brent's hand moved casually toward his radio. And she knew it wasn't to call for backup. It was to create a narrative. I'm detaining you for questioning, he said. Loud enough for a couple of onlookers to hear. We've had a report of a woman matching your description. Involved in theft. You'll need to come with me. Nain's pulse jumped. You have no cause to detain me, she said sharply. Her tone cutting through the humid air. I've committed no crime. And I don't consent to being searched or arrested without a warrant or probable cause. Brent stepped in, violating the space between them. You think you're in some college debate? You're not. You're on my street. And if I say you're suspicious, that's all the reason I need. His voice was cruelly calm. Honed from years of talking over people who didn't get to talk back. Nain refused to move. No. I'm not going anywhere until I speak with someone who knows the law better than you clearly do. That did it. Brent's composure cracked. And in its place came fury. Put your hands where I can see them. Now, he barked, already pulling the handcuffs from his belt. I said. Hands up, ma'am. She raised them slowly. Deliberately. Eyes locked on him. Jaw tight with contained outrage. This is an abuse of power, she said. You're making a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your career. Brent grabbed her left wrist roughly. Twisting it behind her back with no care for force or decency. Lady, the only mistake here is you thinking you get to walk around acting better than the rest of us. The cuffs clicked shut. Cold metal biting into her skin. A small crowd had begun to form. 2 high schoolers with phones out. An elderly woman peering from behind the window of a bakery. And a middle-aged black man in a postal uniform. Watching with a clenched jaw and folded arms. "You're humiliating yourself," Nain hissed. As Brent yanked her toward the cruiser. "And me. You'll answer for this. Every word. Every second." Brent threw the passenger door open. And shoved her in with a force that made her shoulder slam into the seatbelt lock. "Get used to the view from the back," he sneered. "It suits your kind." Inside the cruiser. Nain's mind raced. Her heart pounded like war drums beneath her rib cage. But her expression stayed composed. She reached slowly into her coat pocket. Careful not to attract attention through the tinted windows. And pressed the emergency call button on her phone. 1 tap. That was all it took. The line connected silently. Transmitting every word. 3 blocks away. Captain Dorian Brooks was just leaving a city council meeting. When the vibration on his phone made his skin crawl. 1 glance. 1 name. And then the voice. His wife's voice. Sharp, furious, cornered. And then Brent's voice. Harsh, smug, calling her arrogant. Saying she fit the type. Dorian's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. As he turned onto Ellison Street. Back at the precinct. Brent pulled into the lot with a dramatic skid. And yanked Nain from the back seat. Like he was presenting stolen goods. He dragged her across the tiled floor of the station. With all the pomp of a man on a power trip. Past the front desk. Where Officer Ellis, the youngest member of the team. Looked up with immediate concern. Brent smirked. "Got ourselves a live one. Thought she could out-talk me. Try to flex that educated attitude." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "What's the charge?" he asked cautiously. Brent's voice lowered. "Dismissive. Suspicion of theft. Fancy chain. No receipt. Bad attitude. Typical story." Ellis hesitated. "Did she resist? Say anything threatening?" Brent scoffed. "She resisted by opening her damn mouth. Acting like she's smarter than me. She didn't even flinch when I stepped up. Stood there like I was beneath her." In the holding cell. Nain sat with her hands folded in her lap. Back straight. Expression unreadable. Her wrists throbbed. And a trickle of sweat slid down her temple. But she refused to let it show. She could hear Brent outside the cell. Boasting. Degrading. Like a man drunk on his own reflection. And she knew Dorian had heard everything. She could feel it. Like a storm pressing against the horizon. Brent leaned back against a desk. Still talking. "This town's got too many folks forgetting who runs it. I see them walking around like they own the damn place. But not on my shift. I don't care who she knows. She'll learn her place. Like the rest of them." Ellis shifted uncomfortably. "You sure this is clean, Brent? This isn't going to blow back?" Brent narrowed his eyes. "You think I'd throw my badge away over some cocky tech lady? With a necklace and an attitude? Please. I've been doing this longer than you've been shaving." The precinct doors swung open. And Dorian walked in. He didn't storm. He didn't yell. He just stepped through the room. Like gravity bent toward him. Eyes like steel. Jaw tight enough to break. Brent didn't even see him. Until the entire room went quiet. Then he turned. And his face went white. The door clicked shut behind Dorian. And the silence that followed was deafening. Every officer in the room had frozen mid-task. eyes tracking Captain Dorian Brooks. Like a predator entering foreign territory. The air thickened with tension. Humid and electric. The kind that clung to skin. And squeezed the lungs. Dorian's uniform was immaculate. Badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. But it wasn't the uniform that commanded the room. It was his presence. He didn't have to shout. He didn't have to raise a single hand. Authority pulsed off him. Like heat from an engine. Brent Malloy's smirk disintegrated. His mouth opened. But the words got caught somewhere behind his teeth. He looked like a boy. Who had been caught with a match. And a barn full of hay. "Captain," he said. Voice strained. Too chipper. Too late. "Didn't know you were coming in today." Dorian didn't blink. "I wasn't," he said. Flat and cutting. "But I received a live transmission on my phone. From the woman you arrested without cause. My wife." The last word hit the floor like a dropped hammer. Every set of eyes snapped to Brent. Ellis's jaw slackened. The sergeant by the desk stopped breathing mid-inhale. Brent paled. His posture faltering. "Wife," he stuttered. "Wait, I didn't." "You didn't what, Officer Malloy?" Dorian stepped forward. Slowly. Each step measured, deliberate. His voice never leaving that ice-cold register. "Didn't know her name. Didn't bother to ask. Didn't stop long enough to consider that she was walking home. From a professional forum. Wearing her ID. Minding her business. Until you decided she looked too proud to be innocent." "I thought she matched a description," Brent said quickly. Sweat beading along his hairline. "There was a report." "There was no report," Dorian snapped. The chill cracking for the first time. "I checked dispatch. No thefts reported. No missing persons. No suspicious activity on Ellison Street." "You made it up. You manufactured a justification for profiling her. Based on what?" "The necklace she wore. The color of her skin. Her refusal to cower under your gaze." His eyes burned now. Not with rage. But with bitter, focused disappointment. Brent's voice cracked. "She got confrontational. She asserted her rights," Dorian shot back. "That's not confrontation. That's citizenship." The room was still. Even the hum of the air conditioning felt muted. Nain sat behind the holding cell bars. Her posture regal. Head held high. Eyes locked on her husband. She hadn't said a word since Dorian entered. Not out of silence. But out of choice. This was his moment now. But it had started with her. And she wasn't just watching. She was measuring the man Brent would be. After this ended. Brent swallowed. Took a small, instinctive step backward. "Sir, I didn't know she was your." "You shouldn't need to know who she belongs to. In order to treat her with decency." Dorian roared suddenly. And it was the only time his voice rose. Booming through the walls like a thunderclap. "You're not just a disgrace to this badge. You're a liability. To every community member. Whoever dared to trust you." Brent looked around. As if searching for an escape hatch. No one met his eyes. The room had already sentenced him. Ellis finally spoke quietly. "Captain. I didn't know what was happening. But it didn't feel right." Dorian's gaze shifted briefly to Ellis. And something softened. "Then remember that feeling," he said. "Let it guide your decisions. Because next time. You might be the only thing standing. Between justice. And a story that ends. With someone in a morgue. Instead of a holding cell." He turned back to Brent. Who looked like a man about to be unmade. As of this moment, you're suspended. Effective immediately. Badge, gun, desk. Gone. And you will be required to attend 6 months of racial bias rehabilitation and psychological assessment before you even think about applying for reinstatement. Brent's knees trembled. Captain, please. I didn't mean harm. I thought I was doing the right thing. No, Dorian said coldly. You thought you were untouchable. You thought power meant domination. Not responsibility. You thought a black woman walking with pride was a threat. Not a citizen. You didn't enforce the law. You enforced your own hatred. Brent's voice shrank. Please. Don't end my career. At that, Nain finally stood. The cell door had been unlocked during the commotion. But she hadn't moved. Until now. She stepped forward. Heels clicking. Shoulders squared. And faced the man who had tried to break her spirit. She spoke with clarity and calm. But her words cut deeper than rage ever could. You tried to strip me of my dignity. In front of strangers, Officer Malloy. You tried to reduce me to a stereotype. You failed. But I don't want your job ended. I want your conscience awakened. You don't need punishment. You need to understand what it's like to be humiliated just for existing. Dorian's expression flickered. You sure? He asked her softly. Yes, she replied. If we don't give him a chance to see what he did, really see it, then nothing changes. Dorian nodded slowly. His jaw tense. His chest rising and falling. With the weight of control. He turned back to Brent. You heard her. You get your chance. But one more misstep. And you're done. You won't wear this badge. You won't carry this name. Brent nodded. Wordless. As tears slid down his cheeks. He removed his badge. Like it was burning his chest. For the first time in years. He looked like a man stripped. Not of rank. But of delusion. Dorian wrapped his arm gently around Nain's shoulders. As they walked out of the precinct together. The late afternoon sun had shifted into gold again. But now it shimmered like judgment. Behind them. The door clicked shut. Ahead of them. A reckoning had only just begun. The next morning arrived with an eerie stillness. Harmontown's sky hung overcast. As if the sun itself was reluctant to rise. On what had been exposed the day before. News had already begun to spread. Whispered between neighbors. Shared in murmurs across cafes. Rippling through the town's gossip mills. With the speed and sting of wildfire. Officer Brent Malloy. Once untouchable. Once smug and smugly respected. Had been suspended. By the very man whose wife he had humiliated. And not just any man. But Captain Dorian Brooks. The backbone of the precinct. The one name even the crooked treaded lightly around. And now that same Brent stood in front of a gray municipal building. 30 miles outside Harmontown. Staring up at a blue banner that read. Bias Accountability Program Enrollment Center. The letters looked like a punishment in themselves. He walked in. Clothes wrinkled. Face pale. The skin under his eyes purpled with shame and insomnia. The waiting room was cold. Sterile. Lined with plastic chairs that squeaked when he sat. The receptionist didn't smile. No one did. A clipboard was thrust into his hands. Name. Department. Reason for referral. He paused at that line. Pen hovering. What was he supposed to write? Racial profiling. Ego collapse. Got caught. He scrawled, "Incident with community member," and shoved the board back. Without meeting her eyes. An hour later, he was escorted into a room with 15 chairs in a circle. Already half filled. The walls were bare. Except for one framed quote in thick black font. "You cannot heal what you refuse to confront." It was louder than anything spoken aloud. He took the last empty seat. And looked around. A middle-aged Latina woman sat to his right. Her arms folded. A black man in his 20s. Tall with a sharp jaw and sharper eyes. Watched him like a hawk. Across from him. A white woman in a social worker's badge. Stared at her notepad. Occasionally glancing up. Measuring. The leader entered last. Dr. Sonalal Patel. Mid-50s. Salt and pepper hair. Sari under a blazer. Eyes that saw through you. She didn't greet him. She didn't smile. She simply said, "Let's begin." The session started with silence. Then Sandra spoke. A woman. Her voice low. "My name is Sandra. I was late picking up my daughter. Because a cop stopped me over a taillight that wasn't broken. CPS was called. My 6-year-old thought I'd forgotten her." Brent didn't look up. But he heard every word. A young man added. "I got slammed against the wall at 13 for skateboarding. They told my mom she should keep her kind out of that neighborhood. We lived 2 blocks away." The stories didn't scream. They didn't dramatize. They simply existed. And that was enough to hollow something out inside Brent. Dr. Patel turned to him. "Officer Malloy. What brought you here?" He cleared his throat. "I made a mistake," he said flatly. "A big one." "What kind of mistake?" "I thought a woman was suspicious." "What made her suspicious?" He hesitated. She was wearing expensive jewelry. She didn't look scared. His voice broke off. Shame curling like smoke in his throat. She looked proud. Dr. Patel leaned in. "And that made you angry?" "Yes," Brent said quietly. "I think it did." "Well, I don't know." "Yes, you do," she said gently. "Start there." He looked up at the others. And none of them looked surprised. Only tired. Tired of hearing variations of his story. Tired of living it. But they were listening. That night. In his motel room. Brent sat with a notepad and a pen. And began writing. To the man who arrested Nain Brooks. The ink bled into the page like confession. He wrote about the heat in his veins. When he saw her walk by. He wrote about the way. He wanted to punish her for not flinching. For daring to feel safe. He wrote about the lies he told. To make himself feel righteous. About the sick satisfaction when the cuffs clicked. And he wrote about the silence in her eyes. The dignity she never surrendered. And how it exposed the coward in him. By the end of it. He was shaking. He read it aloud in the next session. No one clapped. No one absolved. But Dr. Patel nodded once. "That's the beginning of accountability," she said. "Not redemption. Not yet. But the beginning." The program continued. Week after week. Brent faced his own biases. Like ghosts that no longer let him sleep. He unpacked his father's rants about keeping order. His training officers' jokes about thugs. His own silence. Every time he heard the word "them" used as a weapon. He didn't defend himself anymore. He listened. And slowly. Something shifted. One afternoon. Brent stood beside a folding table. Outside Harmontown High. handing out flyers titled, "What to do when you're stopped by police." He wasn't in uniform. He wore a plain blue shirt. And a name tag. Brent, Community Liaison. Some parents walked past without a glance. A few whispered. One mother took a flyer. Then looked him dead in the eye. And said, "Do you even remember the people you scared?" Brent didn't flinch. "I do now," he said quietly. "That's why I'm here." Watching her walk out. Realizing too late. Who truly had freedom. And for the first time in years. He wept without hiding. It was late autumn when Brent Malloy returned to the Harmontown precinct. The sky had traded its summer blue for a low-hanging gray. And the trees along Ellison Street had begun shedding gold and rust-colored leaves. Like the town itself was in mourning. Or transition. He couldn't tell which. The building hadn't changed. Same chipped paint on the front steps. Same squeaky door hinges. Same low murmur of officers trading stories across the bullpen. But he had changed. And he knew the weight of walking through those doors wasn't just about a job. It was about whether he deserved to wear the badge again. Whether he ever really had. He entered quietly. His hands at his sides. No longer clenched in certainty. His uniform was neat. But he didn't walk like a man trying to prove something. He walked like someone who had lost more than he thought he could. And had to earn even the smallest thing back. 1 inch at a time. Captain Dorian Brooks stood waiting near the main desk. Arms folded. Face unreadable. The hum in the room dimmed. Like sound knew when it needed to yield. Brent stepped forward. Until only a few feet separated them. And for a moment. No one said a word. Then Dorian spoke. Low and sharp. "You asked to return. Why?" Brent didn't look away. "Because I've changed," he said. "Not just because of the suspension. Or the program. Or the letter. But because I finally understand the damage I've done. Not just to name. Not just to you. But to this badge. To this place. I was a coward who hid behind procedure. And now, I'm asking. Not demanding. For a chance to do it right." Dorian studied him. With eyes honed for lies and performance. And what he saw wasn't guilt. It was something heavier. Remorse. Etched into the lines of Brent's face. Like weather into old stone. "You're on probation," Dorian said. 6 months. No fieldwork. Community liaison only. You'll attend every anti-bias training this department offers. You'll mentor new recruits. And you'll do it without talking about yourself. You'll listen. Learn. And if I hear one whisper that you've reverted, you're gone." Brent nodded slowly. "Understood. And this isn't a redemption arc, Officer Malloy," Dorian added. The last word laced with warning. "It's restitution. For every person who didn't get to walk out of a holding cell. For every story that never got a second chapter." "Yes, sir." As the months passed, Brent did as he was told. He sat in circles with fresh-faced recruits. And told them how not to be him. He volunteered for school visits. Where kids eyed him warily. Until he told the story they didn't expect. The one where he was the villain. And slowly. Wariness turned to questions. And questions to conversations. He stood outside community forums. And listened. Really listened. To people who had every reason to hate the uniform he wore. And he never defended himself. He only said, "I'm sorry. What can I do to help make it better?" And he meant it. But the real test came. One spring evening, when a formal precinct dinner was held to celebrate community reform initiatives. Dorian and Nain arrived together. Both elegant in their way. He in a dark suit. She in a jade green dress that shimmered beneath the lights. The same hue as the stone Brent once mistook for stolen. They were the quiet storm at the center of the room. Admired, respected, untouchable. Brent hovered near the edges. Unsure if his presence was welcome. He had no right to assume so. He stayed back. Until Dorian caught his eye from across the room. And gave the smallest nod. And then Nain turned. She walked toward him. Slowly. Deliberately. Each step radiating the kind of composure that could level nations. When she stopped in front of him, the room fell into a hush. That felt like held breath. "I've been hearing things," she said evenly. "Good things." "I've been trying," Brent said. Voice quieter than it had ever been in her presence. She nodded. "Trying isn't a destination. But it's a start. I don't expect forgiveness. And I'm not offering it like a prize," she replied. "But I do believe people can change. I believe they must. If anything's going to be different. For those who come after us." There was a long pause. And then she said something that would live with him longer than any reprimand or headline. "You took something from me that day, Officer Malloy. But what you've done since then, that doesn't give it back. It builds something else. And if you keep building, maybe someday, someone who looks like me will see someone like you. And not have to wonder if they're in danger." Brent swallowed hard. "I'll keep building." That night, when Dorian took the podium, he looked out over a crowd of city officials, community leaders, officers, and citizens. But for a moment, his eyes lingered on Brent. Then shifted to Nain. "There's power in a badge," Dorian said. "But there's more power in accountability. We are not defined by our worst moments. But we are responsible for them. And sometimes, justice doesn't come from punishment. It comes from transformation." The room erupted in applause. But Brent didn't smile. He stood still. Hands folded in front of him. Humbled. Hollowed. Rebuilt. Years later, when a plaque was placed on the wall of the Harmontown precinct, reading, "In honor of the voices who demanded better," Brent passed it every day. He never forgot who he used to be. But he didn't have to. Because the man he was now would never let him become that again. And every morning, as he passed the plaque near the front desk, "In honor of the voices who demanded better," he didn't look at the names. He looked at the space beneath them. A space still waiting to be filled.